Hey everyone, we have another pressing project coming down the pipes, and I wanted to share my first impressions with it. I just pulled it out of the box. This is a book that I picked up on Instagram from Elite Comics. They do consignments and occasionally have some killer deals on prices of people trying to move books, and this is, I think, one of those times. Now, everybody knows the market's been kind of crazy lately. Depending on where you fell after, let's say, the correction, then you could be sitting on some books that you are underwater on and spent a little more during the pandemic high than you may have liked to. And we certainly know that it's a buyer's market right now. So I'll say that if you're into the investing game of this hobby or the investing side, then don't be afraid from jumping into the market and trying to recoup some of those sunk costs, let's say, in some bigger books that you may be sitting on. And I think this is an example of that here. I saw the opportunity to pick up this book. I think that there's some room for improvement with it. Yes, there's books that I'm sitting on that I wish I could have sold for 40% or 50% more. To get into this book, but I think that it's just like the stock market. It's just a continuation of playing the game and staying with it. So maybe don't change your buying strategies as much, but keep going and seeing where you can make some dollars and make some of that dollars back if that's, again, part of your collecting, which for a lot of us it is. You know, a lot of us say collect what you like and like what you collect. I think you can do that and also invest in the same time, and I guarantee that a large number of you probably feel the same. So I love collecting Amazing Spider-Man. I like the characters of Punisher and Spider-Man. I already have a copy of this book, so it's one that I enjoy on working with. I'm familiar on working with. I know some of the quirks of this book, like it has some staples that like to detach themselves, so there's things to watch out with. And when I picked this up, I thought that there was some room for improvement, and I'm going to walk you through that. So here's a 4.0 that I picked up. Again, I looked at the grader notes every time I go to buy a book, if they have them. Thankfully, we don't have to pay for them anymore on CGC, so these were available. I picked up this book, and you can see that the front cover is pretty, I mean, it's a clean-looking book. It's not, doesn't look horrible. There's no tears. You know, for a 4.0 with white pages, there's not really anything crazy overt from the front cover. You can notice some of the what's it called? The Newton rings that people don't like with the CGC encapsulation. So this book has some of those Newton rings. There's definitely some discoloration and spine wear. So you can see areas where the spine is stressed, and along with that, a lot of soiling that's there. You can also see whatever this is, but there's also places in here where the book just, I can tell even within the case, doesn't look flat. You know, it's got bends, not so many creases, which is really what I think is appealing. Like there's some chipping, you know, there's some chipping, some dulling on the corners, but there's no, you know, I see maybe little tears, and maybe a little tear there, but not really horrible, and not a bunch of color breaking creases, where you would expect a 4.0 to be. And the notes didn't say that it had a detached staple, so I'm not expecting for this to open up and for these to be hanging off. Granted, it could be, so you never know. We're going to turn over the back, and now you're going to see where the majority of the improvement can be taking place. So this book definitely was not one that was kept in a bag and board probably for a long time. I mean, it looks like it was stacked on another book. It's got some color transfer here. Definitely got a tear right there. It's got a tear right there, a tear there. And I think that this impression goes through the whole book now that I'm seeing it. So whatever this is, I think got transferred through to the whole book over here. And there's just a lot of soiling, a lot of bends. This whole thing's a bunch of bends, lots of soiling on the back cover. And I think with some TLC, this can really be cleaned up. And I think this is where the majority of the improvement is. When you look at this, it's got really good, it shows really well. So you're like, okay, this is great. The colors are great. there's no tears, there's no huge creases going down the corners of it. This can be fixed, and then you turn it over and you realize, okay, this is where most of the problems are. And of course, again, white pages in this book. I really think we can maybe get this to a 6.5, I'm hoping. I mean, unless I open it up and there's something crazy. These tears, of course, maybe holding it back, but I think that this book has some potential. So again, got it at a great price for even the current market. Gonna probably squeeze a couple more grade points out of this, and in where things are selling for, I think that's at least a $200 to $300 or $400 increase in value, even if you consider like commissions and fees after selling after that. So again, if you're into the collecting, then this would be a great book to get into. If you don't have an ASM 129, to get up to a 6.5, now you're in a book that's got some value built into it. And that's how I've structured my collecting, and that's how I've kind of not maybe suffered as much during the current correction, which, you know, I think is indeed a correction. If you look at the trends for the prices, and maybe we can even do a video on this. If you look at the trends of the prices, you have the pandemic kind of spike, and then basically a linear line that connects the rest of it. So it's not that we saw a crash. It's just that, you know, with the correction of inflation, much like in goods, it's also corrected the price of the comic book market. So a little business aside, but again, if you were wanting a 129, this would have been a great book to get into. Again, this is my second one. You guys, I think, saw a video on my first one that I had signed by Jared Conway. So there's going to be some work that goes into this, and I'm going to see how well we do. All right. I realize I haven't cracked the case for you guys on video in a while. I have a video specifically doing that. I'm going to try to do that here. I'm on basically my dining room table where I do most of my comic book work. Much to my wife's dismay of taking another space in the house for this hobby. The table has got the camera on it, so while doing this, it's probably going to shake the table. We'll see how it goes. If it's not working, you know, I'll cut away and at least get into it, and then we can go the rest of the way to get the book out. But this is the tools that I use. I usually use one of these smaller hammers, and then a chisel, and depending on, you know, whatever chisel I have available, it could be of varying sizes. But the general idea, and again, I do this usually in the garage because it's easier to hold the book and have a more secure surface underneath. Of course, you want to go where the book is not, right? And there's only two places you can do that, here and here. So that's where I usually enter it. I place the stable, I find the crease right there on the book. I take the hammer and I just tap it. Actually, that wasn't too bad. I just tap it gently. And then why I like this as opposed to a screwdriver is you can just turn the blade of the chisel and kind of just pry it open. And then you can also take the chisel and run it down the side of the book like that. So again, I'm just like spreading it open, and I'm just going to run the chisel down the side. And I'm going to, of course, keep it away from the book, but you can just basically run it down the seam of the slab. Last little bit. And it's probably open enough for me to get it out now. So there we go. One cracked case that doesn't look cracked, so I'll probably, you know, sometimes I use these for decorations for my kids. I'll put other comics in there and give it to them. But I usually toss them if I do irrevocable damage to them. So I'll put those aside. I always keep these, so you can send these back to CGC and they update the census with them. I have a stack of them, so I would probably, maybe at MegaCon, you know, I'll get all mine together and I'll turn them in, and they can do their thing and take them off the census. But let's clean this area a little bit right here. So we pulled it out, got the label. I'll set that off to the side. And the next thing you need is an X-Acto knife. I would also make sure it's got kind of a newer blade. You want to make sure that it's got a nice sharp tip on there. And one other thing that I'll do is I'll take the book and I'll kind of give it a little tap like that to get it as far away this way as possible, away from the side that I'm going to be cutting. Now, depending on when the book was encapsulated, it may have different types of inner wells, all right? And you can tell what type it has by where this, I don't know what the technical term is, basically the soldering. I mean, this is basically like a heat melting something where they melt these two pieces together, right? So you look to see where that seal is, and of course you need to cut on the inside of that seal. And what I like to do is just aim for the very near inside of that and not go all the way to the inner well. So inner well would be like, I'll show you right here is the inner well, like by the edge of the book. Right by the edge of the book, as opposed to right here next to this line. So I like to stay just to the left of that seam so that I'm the furthest away from the book as I can, while still being able to remove it. And don't overthink it. Just like if you were drawing, move your arm and not just your wrist, pull it down. And if you don't make it all the way through the first time, it's okay. You can go back and pick up, either retrace that line or pick up after you cut the sides, go back and see where there's like a little bit hang up. Now, of course, you want to overlap the cut you just made, and we're going to go straight down the bottom. All right. All right, you can see, use this to kind of pick at it, and you can see there's maybe a couple parts over here where I didn't cut all the way, and I can just retrace. That's what I was saying, you can just retrace over where that space was. All right, and now I'm going to do the top side. You want to do at least 3 sides. You can get kind of tricky and maybe try to slide it out one side. I would not recommend it. I think your risk of tearing something or bending something, trying to pull it out that way, is more than your risk of accidentally cutting the page or the book while you're doing it this way. So let's see. Ta-da! Recap that. Get my backer board I'm going to be working on, and now I can open this up. You want to make sure sometimes the book is like kind of stuck to one side. Just be careful of that. Pull it out, discard that, and then, depending on the book, there may be this MIP paper in there. I haven't figured out which books they put that in for and which they don't. I don't know if it's a era thing or what, but some books, modern books won't usually have that in it, but books of this era will. Love that page. Okay, staples look good. There's definitely edge wear here that I'm gonna have to make sure it doesn't turn into a spine split. All right, that would kill it. And now we can take a look at what we see. So this book's definitely not been pressed. If I shine it through the light right here, you can see the bends on the cover, right? Lots of bends. I guess let's see if this goes all the way through. I haven't figured out what that is. Yep. So that, whatever this thing is, that goes all the way through the book. It's some kind of like impact mark or something. That goes all the way through. That may be requiring some tack ironing. You've seen me do it before where I have to tack iron every single page. There's also this thing. I realized this little dent, that goes all the way through the book as well too. So I think we're seeing why it was a 4.0. Things that go through the book like that will significantly impact the grade. And it wasn't something that was on the grader notes. It should have said bends that go through book or something like that, bends through book or impact to book or like bends through book. So these things should have been noted on there. I didn't see it. Again, the one thing that really worries me is that I don't want spine split right there. That will make sure that it doesn't get higher than a 4.0. And we can take a look at the back cover. So I'm gonna I mean, this is just like heavy soiling. All right. Inside there doesn't look bad, but again, there's that bend, there's a tear. Yeah, and you can see, I can see some, this edge wear right here is on the verge of being a spine split if there was any more stress. So I'm going to be extra cautious with this book. I'm not going to put anything other than copy paper on underneath it when I press it, and I'm going to be very careful when I'm opening it. And this, we're going to have to figure out what that looks like. I'm going to try to straighten out this page, but again, has not been pressed. You know, if we look at it in the light, has not been pressed, and it has definitely not been cleaned. Lots of soiling there. So we will get into cleaning this book, and we'll see how far we can get it from there. Alexa, set a timer for 2 minutes.
2 minutes, starting now.
All right, so at this point I've done 2 minutes of humidification per side. This is a deviation from the normal standard CPR protocol, which uses a tub full of water at a known temperature to create enough moisture, and you leave it in for several hours. There's a pretty complex table that explains how long to put it in, but I ain't got time for that. So I just have had good luck with this humidifier. Now, one of the downsides is you might not get humidification all the way through the book, and it mostly impacts the cover. So for the impact mark, the deep impact mark on this, it may not address as much as other humidification methods, but I will probably use the tack iron to address those spots. Now, the other thing we talked about when we were looking at this book first is that usually I would use a piece of 80-pound cardstock, which is this stuff, under the front and back cover, but because of the spine stress on this book and how much tension there is there, and the possibility of splitting that spine, I'm going to use regular copy paper. We're going to put a sheet of copy paper under the front sheet. All right, all the way up to the edge. And then we flip it over. And we're going to do the same thing. Put a piece of copy paper all the way up to the edge, minding all the tears. So you can see, even with a little bit of humidity, I've already set this tear a little bit. It's kind of flattened out. So we're going to see how that presses out and how that impact mark, this guy on the bottom, presses out. Actually pressing this with another book, so not lonely. Okay, sheet of backer board, sheet of silicone release paper, the book with its stack, and then here's the SRP. See, I'm already worried about that little guy right there. It's the SRP and another sheet of backer board. We're back, everyone. We have the final product of our Amazing Spider-Man 129, first appearance of the Punisher. And I can already tell by the last press that I'm pretty happy with where the book is. So far what we did, we cleaned it. I did a press, so front and back cover, pressed it, brought it back out, saw that that little impact mark on the bottom was still there. Used my trusty tack iron, which we saw, to try to flatten out a little bit more. Then I spot cleaned the back cover and front cover some more because there were some spots that I thought that I could still clean up. Put it back in the press after a little more humidity. Put it back in the press for another 2 rounds. So pressed it 12 hours, flipped it another 12 hours. Actually a little bit more than that, let it sit a little more. And then now we have the final product to take a look at. So I haven't got into it yet, but let's take off our front cover and just take a look at it like this with the coverage on there. So, you know, when you pull it out like this, that's the flattest it's going to be. So when you tilt to the side, and we got it pretty flat compared to where it was before. You can still see that mark where the impact was, but I don't think we're going to get very much further on that, despite how much we try. I could try to tack iron every single page and use this little steel roller bar right here. I don't think it's going to improve that much, and then I'm just concerned about how much back and forth with the cover, especially since we were concerned about the wear there. So that's what the front cover looks like. I'm going to take out the centerfold support and the copy paper that was on the back sheet. We're going to flip it over, take a look at the back. I wish we had a little better light doing this at night, just the way the cycle ended, and didn't want to waste the time with finishing up the last bit of this video before sending the book off. So here's the final back cover. And I mean, man, what a before and after from what this thing looked like when we got it, right? I mean, it was hammered. This tear here was all bunched up. There was lots of discoloration in that spine. I'll put some side-by-sides on there, but it's, you know, it's looking flat. It is looking clean. And once it does some additional rest inside the bag and board, it'll even flatten out some more. But for the most part, super happy with this turnaround. Really excited for the potential bump here. I'm trying to think. This was a 4.0, right? I'm trying to remember what the tag on it was. This was a 4.0 and didn't have any grader notes, but just a lot of overt things on there and stuff that I think could be fixed, right? So there were things on there that I think that we addressed with this press. Make sure I didn't bunch anything up back there. Looking good. Put it in this nice Mylar bag and board. Give myself a little piece of tape. Fold over a little pull tab on there. I want to make it as easy as possible. And then I like to go across like that. So when they pull it off, they just pull the complete thing off. So there we go, man. Looks nice and shiny. Actually, I forgot I wanted to take a before and after picture of the front and back cover, but I will, I don't know. Do I want to pull that back out? There's always a risk of taking it back out afterwards. But yeah, so really happy with how this turned out. I'll take some after pictures and we'll go from there. We'll see how well CGC says I did. See you all later. Put that in there. Now here's where I think it gets interesting. I also had this, let me show all right, I also had this ASM 129 that was a 4.0 white pages, all right? And I made a video on this, so you're gonna see the whole video on this. But the back was just tore up, okay? And I mean, not tore up, but like just looked like somebody had crumbled it up and it was really dirty and everything. I spent a lot of time cleaning that cover. Now, admittedly, on the Daredevil, I did do stain removal on here. I did do blue LEDs to try to lighten the staining on the cover and everything. So that cover cleaned, I think, is warranted, especially for my overt overdoing it on the front cover. That was in the same invoice with this one. This book got none of that treatment. It got a standard clean and press. Front cover was cleaned, back cover was cleaned. You've seen those videos, you know how I do the process, but that was nothing that I do out of the ordinary on hundreds of books now that I have cleaned and submitted and got back as blue labels. The only difference with this one is that it was in the invoice with this. So this came back as a 5.0 with slight B1 restoration with cover clean. So I was super bummed about that. And I'll show you, we'll get to the video later, what it looks like, but that's the back cover. Yes, I cleaned this, but with standard procedures. There was no whitening, there was no, anything out of the ordinary on this book. It was cleaned with, erasers and these little things that I've shown in the video. All right, here it is, ready to get resubmitted. As you saw in the previous portion of the video, I spent a lot of time on this little edge right here, went page by page and added some humidity, used the tack iron to try to remove that little divot. There were some spots toward the end of the book at the top of the book that I also worked on. And then as you saw and you remember from earlier in the video, there was some creasing and dent, a dent that was running through a large portion of the book on this side that I also spent some time working out. But here we go. It looks amazing. I'm hoping that we're not going to have the same issue we had with the first submission. Again, no whitening was used on this particular book, so I'm not quite sure why it got screened for that. There's not really any overt erasure marks on the back cover. I'll take a video of that soon. but this is going back in today, and hopefully we'll see some results. Okay, and here is the back of the book. As you remember, a lot of work went into this back. It was cleaned, dry cleaned, with some pretty significant soiling on there. And really, when I cracked this back open, I tried to spend some time looking at it to see if there's any areas where I removed any of the color of the cover with erasure marks. I don't really use any erasers on the colored parts, so I'm not really sure how that may have happened. I don't see anything really overt over here, and there wasn't really, I didn't do any whitening on the cover, so it looks clean. It doesn't look, as they would call, like overtly clean, based on their description and their grader notes and how their grading, or I should say, their grading criteria. But I think it's a good looking cover, and hopefully, let's take a look at everything else. Yeah, we'll get this back in and we'll see how it goes. All right, tonight I have for you the harrowing conclusion to two separate stories revolving around this ASM 129. The first of those stories is just the normal clean and press attempt for a grade bump process that put a lot of love and care into this book and cleaned the back cover up. I had originally picked this book off of Elite Comics on one of their Instagram sales, and then put a lot of work into it, submitted it, as you'll see in the other video, with a Daredevil 1 that had color whitening done to it by myself, that came back as a purple label and had been a purple label before, that I cracked and put some more effort into trying to overall make the book just look better because I was pot committed. Submitted this with it, and as you see in that other video, and a lot of discussion revolving around it, it came back as a 5.0 with slight restoration, including cover clean. So that's what CGC uses to denote color whitening that's been applied to the book. So this book was a false positive. It was mistakenly thought that I had applied those methods to this book since I had done it to the other book. This book had not had any of that process done. I go into that in a lot of detail in the other video, but here I'm going to show you what the results of this entire process. So I ended up, as you saw, cracking it out, putting a lot of work into it, again, fixing this corner, fixing this edge, taking the tack iron and going page by page through the entire book, dampening it, using the tack iron to smooth things out. And now I have for you a 6.0 white label, or white pages, blue label with this beautiful, Amazing Spider-Man New York scene label, custom label here. And I wholeheartedly believe that that's what this book should be, especially with the extra work that I put into it. I was expecting a 5 or 5. I could definitely see there was still like a little divot in the edge of this book, a little bit of a bend there that I could have spent more time on. I put that extra work into it, and I got a whole 2-point grade. Well, I think that's, what is that? That's 4, because you go 4 to 4.5 to 5, 5.5. So I went from a 4.0 to a 6.0 by really cleaning that cover and spending a lot of time working out all those bends and dings. I couldn't be happier with the book now. Granted, I wish I wouldn't have had this intermediate step, but it did give me the opportunity to go in there, crack it out, and correct some of that stuff that I really should have addressed in the first place. But overall, man, that was a process. You'll see this is one of the most detailed videos that I've done, and I hope that you have learned something through the process, and I hope to bring more videos like this to you guys in the future. Maybe not with such side quest excitement in this particular one, but I leave you with this beautiful book, 6.0 white pages, ASM 129. Good night.